We're almost there.
Jeff, you can hear us okay?
Yes, we can.
Sounds good, and we can hear you. Hi, everybody.
Okay, I will call to order the Southbury Board of Selectmen regular meeting, March 18th, 2021, to order at 7 p.m. If we could have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, first up is public comments, limited to 2 minutes. Jason, you are handling that. Do we have anybody?
Do you want to start with the people in the room to give folks time to call in? If
Oh, okay, yeah, we could do that.
there was a couple on, and then we can.
Okay, so we could have, anybody who wants to make a public comment, limited to 2 minutes, please come forward in the room and make a public comment.
You let me know when you're going to start the clock, Jeff.
You can start, John.
Okay. For those of you who know me, my name is John Riley. I am on the Board of Finance, was on the original Strategic Planning Task Force, and am the Board of Finance's liaison to the Strategic Planning Commission. I just want to say a few words in support of Mr. Bertram's recommendation to at least discuss and consider a move to a town manager. Management of a municipality is becoming more and more and more complex, okay? And requires a professional, in my view, trained in public administration. The other thing I would just suggest is I believe that the current Strategic Planning Commission, the members have both the intellectual capacity and the ability to gather information and honestly analyze it. And I believe it would be a good move to refer this question for a study by the Strategic Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Are you ready for public comment from remote?
Not
Oh.
yet.
We'll get to you in a sec.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Shanna Bertram, 295 Weston Hook Terrace. The following comments are purely my own and do not reflect any committee upon which I currently serve. I applaud the board for adding a discussion of town manager style of government to your agenda this evening. According to the Office of Legislative Research, there are 33 towns within Connecticut currently employing a town manager. At least one town has had this form of government since 1961, so it's not a new concept. There have been discussions on this topic within Southbury, dating as far back as 2008 Charter Revision Commission. The 2018 Strategic Plan Task Force, in their townwide questionnaire, identified that 47.4% of those surveyed were in support of a town manager, and recommended the topic be part of the 2018-2019 Charter Review. You may recall the correspondence from the 2018-2019 Charter Revision Commission in both June 2019 and August 2019 urged the board to continue to examine this topic further. As a former member of this commission, I'm happy to see it come before the board at last. Thank you so much.
Okay. Any other public comment?
John Gray, Patriot Road. I was the vice chairman of the last Charter Revision Commission, which delivered recommended changes to the charter to the Board of Selectmen in 2019. The town manager position was brought up numerous times in public comment directed to the commission. The The town manager issue was discussed by the Charter Revision Commission, and it was determined that the number of dependencies and edits that would need to be considered for a change to a town manager would have been large. Additionally, the research required to feed into those edits would have required the commission to consider just those changes and not deal with any of the other substantive changes required in the charter revision process that year. For that reason, the Charter Revision Commission did not have the time to formally research the town manager issue in as thoughtfully a manner as this topic deserves. I concur with Ed Gitness, the chairman of the Charter Revision Commission, that this topic requires additional consideration by a body who engages in just the task of researching this change and presenting a proposed revision to the town charter to the board. The Board of Selectmen would then be able to decide if the change merits a decision by the people in the form of a referendum. Thank you.
Any other public comment from the room? Any other public comment from the room? Okay, so we can go to the public comment on the phone.
So for the folks on the line, I'm gonna identify the last four digits of your number, and then if you could press *6, it'll unmute yourself, and then the first selectman will keep the time as if you were here, and you have 2 minutes. 2912. 2912,
Okay,
press, there you go. Go ahead,
you
identify
hear me?
yourself, and then you have 2 minutes.
All right, good evening. My name is Ed Edelson. I live at 609B in Heritage Village. I wanted to begin with a couple of my concerns about the report you received last meeting about the Southbury Training School. What was not included was the remediation work begun by the state of Connecticut in 2014 and 15 on the existing buildings. This started at the rate of $5 million per year. The funding was done because the Governor Malloy's task force agreed that the state should not allow STS to deteriorate the way previous administrations had done at Fairfield Hills and Mansfield. This was not mentioned, nor was a question raised as to what happened to this initiative since 2015. What was included was some advice provided by our state senator, that a state senator would lead the commission down through a false narrative regarding the ownership of the land returning to the Platts is very concerning. The most significant preservation of Connecticut prime farmlands took place in 2013, when 900 acres of the training school was transferred to the Department of Agriculture, along with a farmland easement controlled by the Southbury Land Trust. Surely that would have been a time for the Platts to have spoken up, but they received no preferential treatment for any of those 900 acres. The senator's suggestion about the future land ownership demonstrates a lack of understanding of what has happened here in Southbury. But even worse was the senator's advice that this board, you folks, had only one chance to ask questions of the state. That's just not how government works, in my experience. In addition to state agencies willing to work with the towns, we have two lobbying organizations that we pay each year to help town get answers, CCM and COST. That this guidance from the state senator was repeated as fact was also concerning. Separately, I wanted to comment on the town manager form of government. As many of you know, I've been a proponent of having this.
Ed, that's the 2 minutes that you're allotted to make the comment. I'm sorry.
Okay, just
Thank you.
supported the town manager
Thank you.
being looked at. Thank you.
Do we have any other public comment on the line?
There's one more. With the last four digits, 2159, if you press *6, you'll unmute yourself, and then identify yourself, and you have 2 minutes.
John Hirschauer, 411 Carriage Drive. My name is John Hirschauer. I am the Vice President of the Southbury Training School Home and School Association. I'm speaking for myself. As the previous caller stated, I've seen that there have been talks in town government about potential future uses of the training school, and I would just add, and I haven't really prepared remarks here, but I would just say that the 147 individuals living at Southbury Training School right now are among the most profoundly disabled people in the state of Connecticut. It's been their home for anywhere between 40 and 60 years, depending on the age of the resident, and I think that we as a town owe a lot to the facility. There's a lot of volunteer activity that still goes on at the facility, and I think, our group, the Home and School Association, has boots on the ground in the Capitol. We're actively trying to keep the facility open. for the residents who desperately rely on the care that's provided there. And you know, just to add, I think that a more productive way to go forward, and I recognize that the selectmen have to plan for what you see as the inevitable closure of the facility. But I think if you look around the country, ways that other states have used these legacy facilities like Southbury, I think there's a more productive path forward where, you know, we reuse this campus for people with disabilities who are living there now and expand it to people who are currently on the waiting list or being served in nursing home environments where, you know, that sort of care is inappropriate for people with IDD. So I would just say that if you could just include the people currently at the training school in your deliberations on this matter, because to kind of proceed as though closure were a foregone conclusion and nobody were working to oppose that closure, particularly when the facility has done so much to the town, seems to me to be a little disrespectful to the residents who live there. And so I hope their voices would be first and foremost in this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's
Any
it.
other public comment
No,
on
that's
the
it.
line?
Nope.
Any other public comment in the room? Any other public comment? Any other public comment? Hearing none, we'll move on. Announcements and correspondence is in here. You have your reports. Consent agenda, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Emily Harrison seconded it. A discussion on the consent agenda? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Mike and Justin, are you out there? Okay,
I'm an
just
aye.
making sure we didn't
Aye.
lose you. That's all. Okay, minutes, February 23rd, 2021 budget workshop, February 24th, Hello?
Okay, minutes, February 23rd, 2021 budget workshop, February 24th. Hello? Minutes, February 23rd.
Someone's viewing it probably on YouTube and watching.
All right, let's, okay,
Wasn't me, I'm on mute, so.
okay. So minutes of February 23rd of 2021 budget workshop, February 24th, 2021 budget workshop, February 25th, 2021 budget workshop, and the March 4th, 2021 regular meeting. Do we have a motion for approval of all four?
So moved.
Can I have a second?
I'll second it.
Any dis-
Regular meeting. Do we have a motion for approval?
Okay, someone's watching this while they're on, so check your technology. Okay, I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Wait. We don't do discussion.
Aye.
I have something to say.
Aye. Opposed?
Point of order. We did not have discussion, and I have something to say.
Oh, okay. So, we got a little confused with something that's going on with our technology. Okay, any discussion?
Yes, regarding the February 4th, 2021 regular meeting minutes, I just want to say that these minutes are an exact example of what I referenced in our last meeting about minutes not accurately reflecting commentary. Minutes are here to be preserved and reflect the record. Unfortunately, I feel like this concern is now being manifested. There is a quote in the minutes saying that I completely agree with George, end quote. That quote was taken out of context. There really should be a ... there. I was not afforded the opportunity to finish my sentence, let alone my statement. Jason went ahead and made commentary, and that's fine. I waited until the end. But I do want to state for the record that what these minutes state do not reflect my statement or the sentence that I was making. And for that reason, I will not be able to vote yes on the March 4th minutes.
Okay. Any other, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
And the motion carries. Unfinished business? We have none. New business. Discussion of the request of Selectman Bertram to discuss the town manager style of government. George? Go ahead.
I think it's a topic that deserves consideration. I'd like to read some notes that I have here. Back in the 2018-2019 charter revision process, the Charter Revision Commission recommended specifically that a committee be formed to review the town manager option. To quote their report, it said, "The commission felt some topics raised were beyond its expertise and scope. We respectfully recommend that the Board of Selectmen take up these issues or appoint committees to investigate and make recommendations." And the first topic on their list was town manager. And they go on to say that changing the town management structure to incorporate a full-time town manager came up frequently in public comments. While this topic has been examined by previous charter revision commissions, we feel the depth of analysis needed warrants the appointment of a committee dedicated to thoroughly assess the pros and cons and present recommendations. We have compiled the work on this subject by this and previous charter revision commissions and have included it in the materials presented to the Board of Selectmen. The Strategic Plan Commission has also recommended that we study and consider the town manager option. They did actually a survey several years ago when they first started up, and they were doing surveys throughout the town. And that particular survey showed that 47.4% of the respondents were in favor of a town manager form of government. And that's kind of interesting in the sense that there was never really much public discussion about it. So it's not an outlandish idea. I mean, it has support from a lot of people. Another interesting point that came out of their analysis was that they found that a lot of people felt that town hall was resistant to change, and that was seen as one of the weaknesses in their SWOT analysis. I leave that to your own thoughts. A couple other notable statistics that I've run into here in my limited research. I must say it's quite limited. I haven't done a lot. But what I did learn is that there's currently 120 million people in the U.S. who live in municipalities that operate under a town manager form of government. That's a lot of people. 54% of the more than 4,300 U.S. municipalities with population of 10,000 or more use a town manager form of government. I'll say that again, it's 54% of the population of 10,000 or more in towns, of towns that have a population of 10,000 or more. That's over half. Beyond that, 59% of the 347 municipalities with populations greater than 100,000 also utilize a town manager form of government. Currently in Connecticut, we have 33 municipalities that use a town manager. So we're a little behind the average, but that's not surprising. You know, Connecticut's always been slow to adopt new things. We're kind of known as the land of steady habits. Let's see what else I have here. I did find an interesting report done by IBM Global Business Services. It's entitled Smarter, Faster, and Cheaper. And the report found that municipalities under a council manager form of government, which is essentially a town manager with a board or a council handling the political side of it, is nearly 10% more efficient than those that operate under the mayor-council form. I did reach out to Eric Wellman, the first selectman at Simsbury. A little history on that. Simsbury switched over to a town manager back in like 2017. They had a referendum in 2016. The people voted for the town manager. I think it's the most recent town in Connecticut to make the switch. And Eric is interesting. He is a Democrat, and he voted against the town manager. He wasn't a fan of it. But since then, he has become a proponent, and he claims the following. He says, the professionalism of the town manager candidates was impressive. This was in the interview process. They interviewed 3. All the candidates exceeded his expectations and were far more qualified and knowledgeable than anyone in town who might have run for first selectman. He says also that it depoliticized the board and the town meetings are now boring. Eric also found that the town manager was better at finding best practices. He tended, or actually it's a woman they hired, but she tended to ignore political considerations in her decision process. They found that he found that the town manager was apolitical. He mentioned that specifically. And he also noticed that there were beneficial collaborations that he felt would never have happened under the old form of government because of political differences. And those things were starting to happen. He mentioned that the town manager made significant staffing changes and upgrades that would never have occurred under the old system. He found a heightened level of accountability in town hall. He found that department heads that used to handle matters in a decentralized way now collaborated more, and they worked together in a better, more collaborative way. He did say, and I quote, "The change was incredibly positive for the town." Eric says that they are saving money due to the change, although he didn't have exact numbers. And he found that the residents seem to be accepting of the results and they don't get too many complaints. Watertown, our neighbor, has had a town manager for 59 years. We can certainly learn from their experience. They have had some ups and downs, and I've looked into that a little bit. In 2020, there was a move, a petition was formed to switch back to a mayor-council form of government, and it was rejected by the Charter Revision Commission, so they kept the town manager in place. I really don't know the details of that process, but it didn't get through. I understand that New Milford has looked at this process as well, looked at the town manager option as well, and they rejected the idea. So it's interesting that they did. I'm not sure what their reasons were, but Simsbury may be a better example to look at since they did make the change and they can report on the results. Towns that didn't make the change don't prove much except that the people are reluctant to embrace new ideas, or maybe they just didn't like the idea. So there's a lot to be looked at here. From my perspective, personally, I don't endorse this right now either way. I think it's something we should look at and look at it very seriously. One of my concerns is that we don't always get highly qualified candidates to run first selectman. It's hard to get qualified people to run for these positions as elected officials, and that's a problem in a lot of small towns. Elections tend to be a popularity contest. You're not always voting for the most competent person to do the job. I look at the schools as an example. Schools hire a professional superintendent. They would never hire someone from the town to run the schools based on a popular vote. Running a town is a complicated business, and I think it's perhaps more complex in many ways than running a school system. And perhaps it's time to consider hiring a competent, trained professional with degrees in that particular area to do the job. Another point I would make is that a town manager does provide continuity of service during and through the election cycle, and whenever there is a change in the selectman's office, you don't necessarily change the operational side of the town continues as is. So really what it does is divides the political operation of the town from the operation of the town. So instead of having just one body handling both, it's split up, and it makes some sense. I think it deserves consideration, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you for your time.
Okay, anybody else want to?
Jeff?
Yeah,
Mike
who's it?
Rosen.
Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, so I certainly, I concur with George's comments. You know, I have not come to any conclusion as to whether or not this is something that we should execute against, but certainly I think it's worth the exploration. And I do believe, you know, based on the last charter revision group's recommendation, that there should be an entity that takes responsibility for looking at it. I do think, I know we got a public comment letter from Mr. Monteleone suggesting that it be the SBC. I think that that is not a bad recommendation necessarily. I think there's a lot of experience in that group as well. But I think we should explore this without question. And that, you know, as I've said, you know, when asked, I think that this is worth exploring. And, you know, I'm eager to listen and learn along this process to see what other towns have experienced and the impact on residents, most importantly. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Justin, do you have anything?
Yeah, I'm happy to chime in. Good evening, everybody. I think if we're going to consider this, strange as it may sound, this is probably the right time to get started. In my opinion, the appropriate time to make this decision is during charter revision, which gives us a couple years to look through this. Any idea that this is a decision that's going to be made before this fall's election is silly. That's not the speed at which local government works. So prior to seeing Mr. Monteleone's email, I was thinking that our Strategic Planning Commission is the appropriate venue for this to be investigated through. They've recently asked us for new priorities to put on their agenda, and I'm comfortable with that, with this being a primary focus for them moving forward. As much as I agree with what George has to say about the potential efficiencies and upside of this type of government, I would point everybody to the example of Milford, Connecticut, which, through their system of mayor, just put forward their 6th budget in a row that lowered their mill rate. So leadership is not necessarily coming from the type of government, it's coming from the people at the top. So I think we should take a very measured approach to looking at this, not throw the baby out with the bathwater. This has been our form of government for a couple centuries, and make a very informed decision when the time is right. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Okay. Emily, do you have something?
I do. I agree with Justin's comment there. I think that this is going to take some time to consider, which is why now would be a good time. Similarly, I don't have a set opinion one way or another. I hear a lot of pros, some cons, but I do think that this is something that is worth the time to investigate. Our last charter revision committee made the comment that there was a lot here that they couldn't take the time to dive into due to time constraints and resources. So I think we owe it to them to be able to dive into this more, to find out more about it. The one thing I hear in the suggestion with Strategic Planning Commission potentially taking on this task, and while I'm not ultimately wholeheartedly against that, I do see some concerns there. I know that they have some significant priorities already. I also think that that then eliminates the opportunity for some people on the previous Charter Revision Committee to lend their knowledge and expertise that they already heard through the public comments. My recommendation would be to form a new committee that's able to look at this, that maybe is perhaps a blend of both, or finding some way to be able to combine it. But I think that we're missing out the opportunity to lend what's already been said from the previous Charter Revision Committee by not including them.
Okay. Jason?
So, yeah, I have a couple of comments. Obviously, there's pros and cons to a town manager form of government. There's good and bad, and I've looked at all of that. And a lot of times, to me, and I've said this before, I was the vice chairman of the 2013-2014 Charter Revision Commission, and this was one of the topics that came up, as it comes up with every Charter Revision Commission. My commission declined not to pursue it, and in large part, it was because of our analysis and review of what the prior Charter Revision Commission had done. And I think before we make any decisions tonight, I think everyone should take a look at that. The 2008-2009 Charter Revision Commission did a lot of the things you're talking about asking another group to do. They went to various towns, they interviewed, they developed pros and cons, they debated it for many meetings. I've reviewed all of their minutes. There's a lot of good rationale in there for it. There's a lot of good rationale in there against it, and they voted not to do it. Just to share with you my rationale when I was on the Charter Revision Commission, it's my same rationale when it comes up to terms. You know, that topic comes up every 5 years too, that we should have 4-year terms. And as I shared with this board back in 2019 when we were exploring that topic, for me, it always comes back to accountability being the most important thing. I like the fact that our elected leaders have to face the public every 2 years. And if the public isn't happy with them, they can kick them out and hire some new elected leaders. And what concerns me about a town manager form of government is you're adding another layer in between the electorate and the government of the town. Now, there's benefits to that, of course, as well. The arguments in favor of it tend to be, you know, George mentioned continuity. I'd like to hear a little bit more about continuity. We can probably, without asking some task force to do it, we could probably call up CCM and see if we could get a list, not just of the 33 towns that have a town manager, but give us a list of all the town managers that have presided in those towns in the years of service, which I think would be relevant information. Also, a benefit, of course, is it removes it from the political arena, which on the one hand is you know, can be important, but on the other hand, again, it sort of removes you another step from the public. So those are sort of my thoughts generally on the topic, but the thing I keep coming back to when this topic comes up, and when it came up, I was sort of surprised, George, when it came up a couple of meetings ago and you brought it up. I've served on this board almost 6 years now, and except for that letter from the Charter Revision Commission last time around, I can't recall a single person ever coming to this board discussing a town manager topic. And I think it's important not to get too far ahead of the public here. I'd like to hear from the public a lot more on this topic because we haven't. I do have a point of clarity that from my own mind, I'd like to understand. The letter from the last Charter Revision Commission states that it came up frequently in public comments. I read all of the minutes from the 2018-2019 Charter Revision Commission, and I could only find 3 comments from the public. 2 were in favor and 1 was against on town manager. So I'd like to know more from the people on the commission, whether it didn't make it into the minutes. It certainly came up in discussion on the committee, but I really want to understand the public's interest in this, because time and again, given the opportunity, when I was on the Charter Revision Commission, I think we had 1 comment. So I haven't seen it, and I'd like to hear more from our public about this topic. As to the strategic plan survey, I think that's an important point. There was 47% of the people said they were strongly or somewhat in support. A quarter of the people had no opinion on the topic. And just as many people said they supported looking at an independent police department, or looking at an expanded senior center, or looking at a community center in town. So there's a lot of things in that survey, none of which is being brought up. So I'm not sure what the impetus at this time of this subject is. So just the last thing I'll mention is a lot of the work, and I think I mentioned this already, a lot of the work I think has been done, and I think it'd be helpful for our board if we all review all that work before we decide next steps, because ultimately this is a charter question. So if we are to ask a committee to do it, I think the Strategic Plan Commission would make sense. For this reason, I don't want to waste the time of another group of volunteers, because any group that comes to us with research really has no authority over this subject. The proper body to get into this is the Charter Revision Commission, and I would want whatever Charter Revision Commission is appointed ultimately to be the ones to do a lot of the heavy lifting, because the people that are going to make the recommendation and actually draft the changes and explore how a town manager implementation would work, I would want them to have a deep understanding and knowledge of the topic. And so my thought on the Strategic Plan Commission is I think we should if we're leaning towards that idea, and it sounds like a number of people want to talk about this and do something, I think before we do that, we should take a look at the strategic plan, because that's the Strategic Plan Commission's charge. And as a board, we should come up with a new list of priorities. Town manager was never presented to us as a priority of the Strategic Plan Commission, and hasn't been mentioned to us in the last year and a half. So I think we should look at that. If we go down that path, we should look at the strategic plan. We should look at it thoroughly, like they've been checking off items on their box. We should meet with them and come up with what the new list of priorities are. Is town manager at the top of the list? Maybe it is. I don't know. I haven't read through that strategic plan in a while, but I think we should take the time to do that if we're looking at that commission to do some of this research. So
Okay.
those are my general thoughts on the topic.
So what maybe I'll do is I'll ask my office to gather together all the past, how far back with the strategic, or not, with the charter revision minutes, specifically, if we can, on this subject, and what research was done. We'll get that together and get that out to the board. I think the other thing we can do is, as board members, look at their strategic plan list and see if there's something that we could look at, have the strategic plan work on next. If that's something we want to do, because it was in the list. And then we can discuss this again at the next meeting, if that's okay. Does that make sense? Okay. Next on new business is discussion on SharePoint. I know we've been talking back and forth on that, whether it can be used or not. Emily, you had brought this up. If you could, I know it sounds like a great thing, but I'm not so sure it's workable with FOI.
Give me 1 second. I didn't know I was going to be going first. Okay, I'll just bring up. So I reached out after our last meeting to Tom Hennick, who, for those listening, works on the state with FOIA and has come out and even taught the town of Southbury on the rules of FOIA, and just asked him if this is a tool that we could use if he felt like it would violate FOIA violations. And in the discussion I had with him and an email that I shared with the board, essentially his comment was that SharePoint is absolutely a tool that we can use as a board. We were referring to it in the terms of the 6 of us editing questions for Southbury Training School to potentially present to the state. His comment to me was that if we were to get into that document, people could redline edit it, but could not make comments. So, if you do track changes in a Word document, you can edit, you can also provide commentary. His one note back to me was, you cannot provide that commentary because that's a discussion like we would be having in a board meeting tonight. Similarly, though, you can't do that even within a Word document. So it's really no difference or change there. If you want to provide an edit, you can do that. But if you were to provide your commentary as to reason why, and we were all talking about that as a board, that would violate the regulations and rules as well. So there is a way, instead of all of us having to work on a separate document and pass it around to each other, that there is a way that we can work 21st century style using SharePoint, and then bring all of those edits back to the board as a discussion, as we should be doing regardless of whether we use Word or SharePoint.
Okay, so it seems it's difficult.
I think no matter what, if we're working on things outside of a meeting and editing it together, it's going to be difficult no matter what. Whether I put my edits into a Word document or a SharePoint and then I have to look at 5 other documents, at least it brings it into one document together.
Can I make a comment here?
Sure, George.
I think we're talking about specifically the question list related to Southbury Training School, is that right? That's why we're having
That's why
this
it came up,
discussion,
Yeah.
It's not that big a list. I mean, I was part of the process that the SPC worked through to come up with a list. I was involved with it. I didn't make the list, but I did add some comments to it. I would offer my time to become the chief editor of that list and just take it on and work on it, present drafts to the board, and you could comment as you see fit. If that makes this process go a little quicker, I have some time, I could do that if that helps. Or if somebody else wants to do it, they can volunteer too. But, I mean, I'm not trying to take it over, I just want to be somebody who can maybe be the gathering point of information, and I'll try to edit appropriately and make the changes that seem to make sense.
Jason, you look like you've got,
No, I just want to comment on I think it's important to have the SharePoint discussion, because this is going to, this isn't just limited to, we're looking at it with this one example, but this is going to come up again, so we should figure it out. Like, are we going to be able to use it or not? So putting STS aside for the moment, which we do need to figure out what we're going to do, my concern with it was obviously the commenting. That's obviously a problem. But then I after we got your email and Tom invited, feedback from others or calls, so I had a call with Tom that afternoon. That's Tom Hennick at Freedom of Information Commission. And my concern was editing the document. So I go into the document and I have the ability to edit it. And then Selectman Harrison goes into the document and you can now edit my edits. And, then Selectman Rosen can go in and then delete that line. And those actions are where you start crossing over the FOIA meeting line. And that was my concern, and it sort of sets us up on a path where like if we're gonna use it, that's why I said, let's not do anything, let's talk about it at the meeting so everyone understood the parameters. We would have to sort of set strict rules amongst ourselves as to how we're gonna use the program, because we can't do those things. We can't edit each other's edits. I know that sounds bizarre to people that might be listening or watching who aren't involved in municipal government or with FOIA, but unfortunately, FOIA ties our arms behind our back and tells us we need to, govern in a certain way, and that's just, that's the laws we live by. So when you start doing that back and forth and editing each other's work, you're then having a discussion, you're then having a meeting. It's just like circulating an email and everyone replying and replying again. So that was my concern. So the tool, while it's a great software, I think the utility of it in this context is quite limited. Like we can't use a lot of the tools that would be helpful. So I just wanted to make sure my concern, like those are my concerns as to.
Mike or Justin?
Yeah, Jeff, thank you, Mike. So like Emily, I believe, I use SharePoint every day at work. And one of the key features of SharePoint is the commenting part, where you may not have an edit, but you want to comment on someone else's edit. So I think, that is a limiting feature. To Jason's point, I do that, where I'd want more guidance from council would be on Jason's point of someone editing someone's edit. Because you could see where someone edited. So you could set it so it doesn't delete. Like if Jason made a comment on a Word document and then I went in and made an edit over that, it would show both, I believe, still. But I still, I share some of Jason's concerns regarding whether or not this is, if it's going to be a viable solution for us with FOIA, with the FOIA restriction.
Okay. Justin?
I wish it wasn't.
I don't want to leave you out, Justin, if you have something. If not, that's okay.
Jeff, I would just echo those comments. I mean, it's really more of a legal question than my personal preference. I'm happy to work with whatever software you guys throw in front of me, so.
Okay. So I think what we're, at this point, we're, before we step into a situation that we don't want to get into, we should think about this some more and how we're going to, I don't think SharePoint's going to work for us. But I will think, I believe we were going to set up a special meeting. Get our schedules, and we're going to have a special meeting to go over. I think that's the easiest way at this point to get the training school questions settled, would be just a special meeting. So if we're not if we don't get to it tomorrow, we'll get to it Monday and get some, there again, you know, it'd be nice if we could all share our calendars. But we'll send out, maybe what we'll do is email Betsy some good, or Noreen some good days, some evening or something, and then we'll put out an invite and see if that'll work. And we'll call a special meeting to go over the training school questions, if that's amendable to all the other selectmen.
It looked like you had something else to say, I'm sure, but we haven't been able to, Emily and I have been playing phone tag for like 4 days, so.
The worst game of phone tag, I have to add. Yeah, no, I was just gonna say that I don't have my thing is, I'm not here like advocating for SharePoint, like this is the be all and end all. It's more of, I think they're just trying to find a better solution than 6 people sharing 6 different documents, and then you still have to have a point person to be able to make those edits, that at least if it was in one central location, that sounds better to me personally. But what direction we go in doesn't make a difference to me. I just think it's good to look into these things because we are advancing forward with technology, and there are limitations as far as the law is concerned. When FOIA was developed and put into place, I think 50 years ago or so, it didn't have these things in mind. So yeah, there are limitations to its functionality and use, but good things to investigate. I think there's still ways that we can use it, and it's good to know that information going forward.
Okay. So anyway, we will set up a meeting for a special meeting to go over those questions. Anything else on SharePoint? I think we got that done. Okay, first Selectmen's report. Just to let you know, our town attorney is still in contact with Connecticut about the Connecticut water rate and PURA, and communicating with the attorney for HVMA. Online permitting is still scheduled to go live on April 1st, which is very exciting. The people have been working up there, they've been working on this, are pulling it off very well. I'm very impressed with how that's coming together, and I'm very happy about that. I think it'll make a difference for us and in the workload that goes on from a day-to-day basis. I have the engineering, just so that I got just recently the engineering remediation report for Edgewood. It's been sent out to Ty and Bond, our consulting engineer, for their input on reading it. And as soon as I get their report, we will we'll get together with that. Exciting news, our numbers on COVID look pretty good. And it is our intention to open Town Hall, fully open, on April 5th. I think is the date we're looking, if everything goes smoothly, which means that we hope April 5th we'll have a full open where you can come in from normal working hours, and we won't be from 10 till 2, but fully open. A couple other doors unlocked, and we always want to give the citizens access to their government here. Any questions of the first selectman?
Jeff, it's Justin.
Yes, Justin.
Just wanted to, if you could update us quickly on some of the hiring in regards to public works, transportation coordinator, and there's one more, zoning enforcement.
Zoning enforcement, I think, just closed. The transportation coordinators just closed. We're gonna go over that, and we're trying to schedule the public works to interview. I had just texted Dan before the meeting. He will be going out to get times when, I think he did talk to you, Justin?
I got an email on that one, and it sounds like next week, which is great news.
Yes.
I'm not gonna lie to you, my main concern is transportation coordinator. If, supposedly and hopefully, the senior center is gonna open May 1st, which, believe it or not, is 6 weeks away. So, that's a crucial hire that we need to have happen in the next couple weeks.
So just a reminder that in looking forward to that, our floater went down to the senior center and trained that if there's a need at that time, they'll be able to do the transportation coordinator and understand the system. But meanwhile, yeah, we're working on that also.
Good.
All right. Okay? All right, reports from liaisons. Selectman Bertram?
Energy Task Force had a meeting on March 16th. An RFP had gone out a couple weeks earlier for VNM-based supply for electricity, and 2 responses were received. We were hoping for more. The task force is currently reviewing those proposals, and we're starting to do some reference checks. Is there something going on I need to be aware of?
No.
I just heard voices in the background.
That's okay.
The task force has targeted, I think a little aggressively, but they've targeted April 15th as a date to enter the state VNM queue. So that's what they've said in their meeting. The task force is also considering ways and means to audit and improve the energy usage in town buildings. There are some programs and options to consider, some directly through Eversource, some through third-party contractors. And Eversource is considered to be the gold standard, and apparently the third-party contractors can be a little bit unreliable. So that's a process that the task force is looking at pretty seriously right now. We've also spent in the last meeting considerable time discussing how Region 15 involvement would help in this whole thing. We don't seem to be able to get their attention on it, and so I'm not going to push it, but I just would mention that their energy usage in the region is much, much greater than the town's. Combining the town's energy usage with the region's would result in more interest from providers and potentially a lower price on power. We do currently combine insurance interests with the region, and why not also combine energy use? I don't have any connections in the region, so I really can't get anyone's attention there. And I know the region's main concern is in dealing with COVID, getting the schools open and keeping them open. So I'm not criticizing the region at all. I know I get hammered for making comments about people. I am not criticizing the region. And maybe as COVID wanes, if it does wane, we can work on this in the future. Police radio task force, I really don't know if anything's going on there. I haven't heard anything, so I'm not going to report. Strategic Plan Commission did have a meeting on March 11th. 2 new members, I think, are on the consent agenda. Michael Carrington and Gary Garofalo are now part of that group. Their next presentation they would like to schedule for April 15th, and it would be a presentation on their suggestion to combine planning and zoning, and that would be given by Frank Pauza. So that's a request I'd make officially here, if it hasn't been made already, is that he would like to be on the agenda for the April 15th meeting.
George, if John wants something like that, he can contact me directly. That's the proper protocol. But we
Okay,
could
I'll,
just have him just go to hold of me, let me know what it is, and send me the
I mentioned it
presentation.
here, and I'll mention it again to him. As we've mentioned earlier in this meeting, the SPC is looking for more projects. They've come near the end of the list that they had, the 5 that they had previously. So they are thinking, they being John Monteleone, that he'll come up with a list and present it to us of things he thinks they should be working on, which is kind of what happened in the last go-around. They made a list, and then we kind of narrowed it down. I think it's been a few years back. I don't remember exactly what happened. Mobile Telecom Task Force, I would ask permission for Joe Ruggiero to come to the microphone, as he's been doing the work on it, if he wants. Is that acceptable for a few minutes?
Is it supposed to be reports from liaisons? I
know.
don't know if we can.
But it's a little bit of a twist, but I just thought since he's here, he could give probably a little bit better report than I can. But if that's not okay,
Do
then
we need a
I'll.
motion to,
I think the chair can acknowledge
okay,
Mr. Ruggiero.
just to make sure we're doing the right thing. So I'll acknowledge, Joe Ruggiero. Did you want to come up and just quickly give us a, brush up on that? I know you're always quick, Joe.
Yeah.
No doubt.
The effort to continue to do the survey with the leaves off the trees will be done in the first week in April. That's one. Two, we are considering an earlier proposal for the cell tower that was located at the purchase on town property near the firehouse. Looking into putting an RFP together to get an estimate, see if anybody's interested. Reviewed cell tower concept with Steve Schnell to make sure that it was okay with EMS. Costs associated with exposing cellular coverage data on town's GIS system may be prohibitive. We may share the raw data with the public instead and let them use Google Earth Pro. And finally, we are always monitoring up-and-coming technologies, particularly 5G. That's it. I have it written.
Joe, could you just, can you electronically forward that to
This?
my office?
Sure. Let me do both. I'll just hand one and I'll do when I get home.
Okay.
So Joe, just my understanding in my notes here, if we could just make sure we're on the same page. We've determined that the town does indeed own the purchased firehouse and the land. And
Yeah,
the
there's
ce-
nothing
the
there
cell
right now
tower,
that we don't own. It's like
Right.
a public,
including the tower.
the tower that's there is just EMS stuff.
So what you're proposing through this RFP would be to build a new tower, a higher tower.
No, it's I'll bring in, it's
Yeah, if
just
we're gonna
stuff-
go through that, we're gonna
Yeah.
have to
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
put it
it's-
on the agenda.
Yeah, oh, no, we're just talking about it.
Yeah.
We haven't done
that's
anything.
all.
We
It's
just, but the proposal already exists,
Okay,
and we're just talking about
Yep.
resurrecting it, that's all.
okay.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, get that electronically to me. Anything else, George?
IT steering met on March 10th. John Kelbley announced his resignation. He is moving out of town. So he's going to be there, I think, for one more meeting, which I think is April 14th. Anthony Maizano was voted as his replacement to be the chair. Since we're losing John, I think we should be looking for a new member. If there's any volunteers out there in town that hear this message, please submit your resumes to the first selectman's office. We discussed a lot of options at this meeting of ways to improve our ability to conduct remote meetings. It's interesting that several members on the committee have a lot of experience in doing this. They're a big part of their businesses, and they work in large corporations that do these sorts of things, is involved with setting up companies and organizations with remote meeting equipment and capabilities. And I felt kind of funny hearing that. Says, well, you know, we have a need here. Why aren't we getting that kind of support in our town, in our needs? So I'm not sure why that is. It just doesn't seem, it seems like the capabilities of the committee and what we need here don't necessarily get utilized completely. Again, I'm not criticizing anyone. I'm just saying that's an observation. The group in our situation, they felt that we should be able to host multiple meetings simultaneously, and they felt that that's something we should be able to do better. You know, I don't know how many meetings we can host. I think we can do like one meeting right now. And maybe we should look at maybe having a capability to do more meetings simultaneously. We also talked about Dropbox and how it works for town budgets, and I'm gonna work on that with Gosha. Road Study Committee, nothing to report there, so that's it for me.
Okay, Selectman Betty.
Thank you. Just quickly, George, I would say in regards to the Energy Task Force, please don't forget Heritage Village. You got 2,600 houses up there running electric heat, so you could get some efficiencies by calling Jerry Leventhal and bringing those folks into the loop.
We did have a member of Heritage Village on the Energy Task Force. I'm not sure what his name was. It might have been Leventhal, but he resigned. And I'm not quite sure how we could get Heritage Village looped in. It's a nice idea. I don't see how that fits into the VNM scheme, though. We can talk about that if you like.
No problem. So, Investment Portfolio Oversight has pushed their meeting out past the budget hearings. The scheduled meeting would have fallen during our week of our meetings, so that will be next Monday. Both the Senior Commission and Economic Development met yesterday. EDC had a great meeting last night. a lot of updates on continuing progress with a number of new businesses coming to town. I think most of you are familiar with them from our last meeting, but Chipotle, 3 restaurants coming to the Green. There's a lot of good things coming to Southbury. If you didn't already see it, I will email you the article, but Kevin was quoted extensively in a wonderful article in the Danbury News Times and its affiliates this week about how Southbury is attracting lots of new businesses to town despite the pandemic, and sort of in contrast to what is going on generally. So it was a very positive, very good article about our town. I can't help but think it's going to help us bring more businesses as they see that. Senior Commission also met yesterday, as I mentioned. As I mentioned a little bit ago, they are reopening tentatively, obviously, at this point on May 1st. There remains concern about transportation, and are we going to be able to ramp up quickly enough to handle the demand or the perceived demand, which we think is going to be a very vertical curve. Seniors get vaccinated and ready to get back out into our community. So that's what's going on, Mike. Thank you.
I will say that that article in the News Times, I said to Kevin Bielmeyer, it is kind of nice to get that exposure in Fairfield County. I think that's, we're always kind of not getting the articles in the Fairfield County area, and I think that's going to help our town. They seem to be looking at us a lot more than we used to get, and I think that's a great thing.
So I think, Jeff, part of that is the Danbury News Times, which is owned by Hearst, picked up a lot of what was known as the Acorn properties, which are those dailies down in Wilton, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's why you're seeing that, and that is definitely in our favor.
Yes, working good. Thank you, Justin.
Yep.
Selectman Bucksbaum.
So LEPC met yesterday. Emergency Management Director gave his report, a summary of a number of things he's been working on, which he was before us a couple meetings ago and outlined a lot of that here. He talked about the emergency operations plan that he's working on in line with state criteria, and he's going to be getting it out to the various agencies to dive into their plans, and then there'll be a special meeting at the LEPC at some point because they currently meet quarterly, so there'll be a special meeting at some point before that plan is presented to us as the Board of Selectmen. And then the major thing that's going on is there's going to be a reorganization of the committee that we're working on. Currently and historically, this is a committee that has a lot of members. It's going to be pared down. There's new bylaws being drafted. It's going to come up with a manageable group of people, and then have all of the various departments as sort of advisory and available and attending meetings. So that's what's going on there. The Historic Tree Committee had a special meeting last week to appropriate funds, to approve the spending of funds for Arbor Day. Given the current COVID environment, they've come up with, I think, a great idea to celebrate Arbor Day by including our schools, and they're going to be going to our using our kindergarten classes throughout the district and giving out information about Arbor Day and giving out seedlings of trees that kids could plant and some educational materials. So I think that'll be good. And then there'll also be on Arbor Day itself a small ceremony here with flag raising at Town Hall, which is at the end of April. And that's it.
Thank you. Selectman Harrison.
I unfortunately couldn't attend the library meeting due to a conflict, but EMS committee did have their meeting. They are working on some revisions to the EMS plan that was initially presented to the First Selectman's office, so updates coming on that soon. They're also still working through paramedic contract with SAA, working on their annual report back to the Board of Selectmen, and are looking for the volunteer appreciation program to come before them to get approved Lastly, they have an opening for an alternate as well. So as George said, for anybody listening who wants to submit their resumes to the first selectman's office, they'll be in need of a replacement for an alternate as well.
Okay. Selectman Rosen.
Thank you, Chair. Parks and Rec has not met since our last meeting. Planning did meet on Tuesday. A few discussions regarding a few 824 referrals. An interesting discussion regarding an opportunity and referral from zoning at Riverview Cinnamon Playhouse regarding a new business, an expansion of a new business into the lower level, adding MRI, new machine at one of the medical facilities there. Also, conversation about another new retailer coming to Southbury Green, to Justin's point. Kevin Gilmeyer attended and spoken out in favor of both of these and encouraged and is really hands-on and active in supporting these opportunities to smartly to grow the economic status of the town. And like that story was tremendous. The old publicist in me was very proud of that story for our town. Southbury has all the right stuff was the headline. So a great headline. Region 15 is deep in certainly in their budget cycle. I think I mentioned at our last meeting, superintendent's proposed a 2.58% budget increase. They've held 2 workshops to date. There is another public hearing on Wednesday, March 24th, that I encourage those to attend. You can attend virtually if you so wish. Visit the Region 15 website. And I believe it's April 7th. Wednesday, April 7th, they will have a special meeting of the Board of Ed to adopt a final budget.
Okay, what do you have, a background on? It's all black.
No.
Oh, it just looks.
No, it's just dark behind me, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, just I have a light in front of me.
There you go. Okay, thank you. Okay, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Carries. Thank you, everybody. Have a nice night.
Have a good night, all.